Good afternoon. Welcome to the Walker family compound. As you can see, we have many generations of Walkers here. I'm Carrie Ziegler Walker, and this is my husband, Charles Jabez Walker. I always called him Charlie. And Charlie and I were the founders of one of the oldest businesses in Long Beach, Farmers and Merchants Bank. Well, as you can imagine, I would have a lot of story to tell you about that, but alas, we only have a little smidgen of time today, so I think I'm going to talk about some of the things that I like best, including a little bit about me. I was born in 1867. My parents came to Long Beach from the East Coast when I was a young girl. Oh, how I love to read and write poetry. I attended the California Normal School in Los Angeles. It was a teaching college. Today you would know it as UCLA. I graduated in 1893 and immediately got a job teaching school in Springville, California. That's in California's Central Valley region. The school paid for my lodging and I stayed with the Ayers family. Well, that Thanksgiving was my first Thanksgiving away from home. And Mrs. Ayers knew that Charlie was spending the Thanksgiving holiday alone as well. And Mrs. Ayers fancied herself as something of a matchmaker. Well, it worked. Charlie and I liked each other immediately. As a matter of fact, he said he fell in love with me that very day. We spent as much time together as we could, and in 1894, Charlie proposed, and I accepted. I wanted to spend that summer here, back down in Long Beach with my family, so I applied for a teaching job at a new school in Springville, but hadn't heard from them by the time I came back to Long Beach, so I applied for and was accepted at the Pine Avenue School. Charlie, meanwhile, was in Springville, and here I was all the way down in Long Beach. So soon began a very long and very romantic correspondence. Each week, my mother and I would drive down to the post office in our buggy, and each week, there would be a letter from my sweetheart. And then one week, no letter. I was crushed. Had Charlie decided to break off our engagement, or had he found another girl? These kinds of thoughts were swirling around in my mind as we drove our buggy back down Pine Avenue onto 3rd Street. And then, in the distance, I thought I saw a familiar figure. It was Charlie, crossing the street to our house. Oh, my heart leapt with relief and joy. In the future, when anybody asked Charlie, "So, what was it that brought you here to Long Beach?" he would always say, "Well, it wasn't for the climate." Charlie came to Long Beach because of me. We were married at my parents' living room in 1895. Now, Charlie's story was that his father brought the family to Springville when he was a young boy. He went to grade school and took a few classes in business at the local college. So it should come as no surprise that after we were married, we opened up a business of our own, C.J. Walker and Company Real Estate. We were also early investors in what would become Bufham's department store. I always said it was a small beginning in a small city located on a large ocean in a large state with large opportunities. In 1896, our daughter Alice was born, and in 1899, our son, Gustavus, or Gus as we called him, was born. Charlie was a wonderful father. And the year after Gus was born, Charlie was elected mayor of the city of Long Beach. Then in 1907, Charlie was appointed president of the First National Bank of Long Beach. But shortly afterwards, it was discovered that some of the senior officials of the bank had sold their interest to a group of capitalists who refused to reveal their identity. Well, that caused something of a panic, and we were afraid there'd be a run on the bank, meaning that depositors would want to come and get their cash back, and that would have been disastrous. So, Charlie had $500,000 of gold bullion and coins shipped to Long Beach. Now, that was quite a gamble. He was really worried about it, but I was the only one that he confided in. The next day, he stood atop that stack of cash and, looking like the face of confidence, offered to give depositors their cash back. The next day, Charlie was declared a hero in the city of Long Beach. Then in 1921, oil was discovered right up here, and the very next year, there was a big building boom in downtown Long Beach, and many new buildings were built along Pine Avenue, including our new bank. Well, I have to say, the bank that Charlie envisioned and built is a masterpiece. It was completed in 1923. Just stepping through those grand, massive doors is like taking a trip through antiquity. The first thing that you see is all the different colors of the marble, and then the beautiful fluted columns, the classic Roman friezes, and the skylight that just floods the bank with light. It just made my heart skip a beat every time that I walked in. 10 years later, the 1907 panic that inspired Charlie to open up a bank of his own was repeated with a little twist from Mother Nature. It was the Great Depression, and all across the country, depositors were lined up outside of their banks wanting to get their cash back. But because of the stock market crash and the Great Depression, the banks simply didn't have their assets liquid enough to pass out the cash. So, in order to quell that panic, President Roosevelt, on March 6, 1933, declared a bank holiday where all banking transactions were stopped. But then, 4 days later, on March 10th, 1933, at 5:55 in the afternoon, there was a massive 6.3 earthquake that rocked the city of Long Beach, causing a tremendous amount of damage. Well, our building was still standing, but a lot of that beautiful architectural detail just shook loose and came crashing down to the ground. We were able to clean it up a little on the inside, and then 3 days later, the Federal Reserve Bank announced that all banks across the nation would again reopen. But of course, it took much longer than that for us to repair the bank. Well, by 1937, Charlie realized that his heart condition was getting the best of him and that it was probably time for him to retire. He thought that the logical successor would be our son, Gus. So he wrote a letter to the board of directors of the bank, and he said of Gus, "He is versatile and can facilitate a loan with a customer or dig out the sewer in the basement with alacrity." And so the torch was passed to our son. And then the very next year, dear Charlie's heart just gave out, and he died in our house surrounded by me and our children. Meanwhile, Gus had married a delightful woman, Cassietta Smith. She was very lively, had sparkly blue eyes, and I never saw a woman who did more volunteer work in the community. She volunteered at the Red Cross, at the Salvation Army, at Seaside Hospital. You would know that today as Memorial Hospital. She volunteered there for almost 50 years. Also with the Girl Scouts, with the Assistance League of Long Beach, and she was one of the original founders of the Historical Society of Long Beach. Yes, it's true. In May of 1962, she was one of the original signers of their Articles of Incorporation. Isn't that grand? Well, also in May of 1962, at the ripe old age of almost 95 years, I died. But I must say it was a long and remarkable life. And looking back in all of our banking experience, I think the thing that I always enjoyed the best was the month of December, when we would open the bank to the community and serve warm wassail and gingerbread. And the look on the children's faces when they would come in and see that massive tree with all of the lights and the ornaments, and how they loved that wassail and gingerbread, it just made my heart want to sing. Here we come a-wassailing among the leaves so green. Here we come a-wandering so fair to be seen. Love and joy come to you, and to you your wassail too. And we bless you and send you a happy new year. And we send you a happy new year. Thank you for visiting the Walker Compound and for supporting Historical Society.